Good afternoon and welcome to Pittsburgh Land Bank Board of Directors meetings. Oh, habits are hard to break, right? For Friday, March 13th, 2020. The first thing is we'll ask Mr. Leger to please call the roll.
And Reverend Burgess.
Here.
Jamil Bay.
Here.
Senator Fontana.
Here.
Councilwoman Cale Smith. Councilman Lavelle. Steve Mazza.
Here.
Diamante Walker. She's here. And Wanda Wilson is here.
All right. So our first order of business, if we have a quorum, is public comment. Members of the public that want to address the land bank will be given 3 minutes. Is there anyone to address the land bank at this time? Seeing no one, we will go then to the next thing is the minutes. We have the January minutes. They have been emailed to you, I suppose. Is there a motion to approve the January minutes?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposers, nay. There is no direct report from me that takes us, other than we've had ongoing conversations with the administration and think we're moving into a good new direction. Mr. Leger, interim director's update.
Thank you. There are just a couple of things that I want to call to your attention. One of which is that we need to decide the direction for the organization. And included in my report are 4 possible directions. There may be others that if somebody wants to bring them up, but I will start conversations with people around these directions. One is to embed the land bank into the city somewhat, as much as we can. The next is to do it as a standalone organization. Another is to regionalize our land bank along with the Tri-Cog land bank, which is very successful. And the last would be simply to abolish the land bank and try to do this some other way. These are all 4. I'm not endorsing any of them. I'm just saying these are 4 things that have been talked about. I spent a lot of time with Ann Lewis, who's the director of the Tri-Cog land bank, in the last month, just getting a sense of what she does out there. So I picked up a lot of ideas about how to make this move better. And one of the things that she does, she has 19 municipalities and 6 school districts, which just sounds, and they're in the Mon Valley. So it sounds insurmountable to make this work, but she has done that. So I think it might be a good idea to have her in to talk to board members if they want at some time in the near future, just so you can ask questions. But they get their revenue from collections of property tax. They get 5% of the principal of collections of property tax that's delinquent every year, but they only get it for the year that it's collected, the first year. After that, it goes back on the tax rolls, so the municipality gets it. And that's why they're willing to do this and make this work, because that gives them a cash stream. The Cuyahoga County Land Bank in Ohio does the same thing. And they've been very successful too, and they have a constant stream of income. So that's something else to think about. Also, there are a couple things we need to do as immediately as possible. One of them is to figure out what's the model that we want to use going forward. Do we want to use city staff, or do we want to stand alone? Standing alone is going to cost us $1 million a year. We also need to secure the property reserve, because there's an opinion that's been abolished. We don't know if it has. So Reverend Burgess has asked for a legal opinion on whether or not it really is abolished. I have my doubts, and we'll get that opinion from the law department and proceed. It's important that we get that, because that determines how we write the new legislation for the property reserve. Either we have to revive the entire thing, or we just have to add ourselves on as a agent of the 3 taxing bodies, which leads us to the next thing we need to do. We need to revive the co-op agreement with the school district, the city, and the county, adding ourselves on as an agent to those processes described in that co-op, and maybe making some other revisions to the co-op depending on what the other entities want. But it's important that we do that, because that is the vehicle by which we get the rights to deal with the property on behalf of the county and the school district. The city has that now through a co-op agreement, and we would have to add ourselves into that and maybe make a few other changes going forward. So those are the big things that we need to do going forward. And I'll try to get as much of that done as I can immediately. Also in your packet is the RFP for title searches, and that could take it all the way through quiet title or some other form of title at the end of the process. So, Councilwoman, it's lucky you have arrived at this moment, because I need to talk to you about that RFP. As soon as you say it's okay or make whatever changes have to go in it, then I can issue it. But I'll make that arrangement with you. I'll just get enough time to talk to you or whoever you think is appropriate for me to talk to about it. It's a fairly standard RFP, and it uses a lot of legal language. It's not very interesting reading, but it's attached to your packet. And finally, I talked with the URA about the past bills that they have sent us that Ms. Wilson asked me to do last time, and the board adopted that. So I'm going to go back again because I'm not entirely clear about the answer or satisfied with it. So we'll take another bite at that apple. We'll see how that goes. We are not expending any money right now. I've given up the offices over there. I'm not paying anybody, so there's no money being spent except for advertising and for any other minor things that come up that we have to deal with, that we must do. But it's absolutely minimized, so we're not spending any money now. And the URA is not charging us anything going forward. They canceled January and February, and my argument is back with the October through December time period. So I want to go back and discuss that again with more than just the finance staff. Take it all the way up to the executive director and see how we can get anything there. That's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
When you say to incorporate the land bank into city government, are you talking about City of Pittsburgh proper, or are you talking about URA, sort of quasi-governmental?
No, City of Pittsburgh, and that's allowable under state regulation. In fact, it's encouraged to do a co-op where you use as much of an existing group as you can. The Tri-Valley COG in the Turtle Creek and Mon Valley do this by using the COG staff entirely, with just a few exceptions for contracted people like code inspectors and demolition people and some other things that they don't have.
Okay.
And we could do something similar to that using some people who already know the system fairly well. We would have to be selective about it, but we could do that and put it together.
So my only other comment would be that part of my understanding as to why the land bank was created was there was not this Goldilocks scenario. City has to do it one way, URA does it another. The PLB could do it in a way that could be very community-centric and could expedite, reclaiming properties and bring them back on the tax rolls. So would we be talking about sort of an interstitial fix of some of what was ailing the other systems, so that even if it is embedded in that system, those systems are better and this can function effectively?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the short answer. The longer answer is it gives the city the opportunity to get rid of that mishmash that they have of various ways of disposing of property and channel everything through one defined, easier to use system.
Okay.
It is not a panacea because it's still going to take time.
Yes.
Titles are tangled and messy, and so they definitely take more time than the average sale would. But we could probably cut it by half.
Okay, thank you.
Is my guess.
Thank you.
Cut the time.
Existing staff, do you think? I mean, is that part of the problem with time?
Yes, it is.
Enough staff, or is it just that staff are doing other things?
That would have to be determined. We'd have to determine what we wanted a staff to look like to staff this effort. Is it full-time? Is it part of the time? And who does it, and what are their roles? But there would be things that we would still have to contract for. We have to contract for legal services because the city will not support this organization because we're not the city. We're an outside organization. The closest comparison I have is the pension board, which is state mandated and has a board of its own, but is staffed entirely by city employees. So that's a comparison. It's different because we staff it entirely. But we could not staff the land bank entirely. There's still things we have to contract for if we chose that model.
Chairman, may I say something additional? So my other question would be, so I think, checking my URA hat as the Deputy Executive Director, I think there's an opportune time to begin to talk to the URA's new Executive Director as he begins to look at real estate strategy and how to properly staff the existing real estate infrastructure. This may be a warm moment to have that discussion and think about how we could back into that if we decide to go with option one. I'm not saying that we've done that, but if we do, I think that the URA is primed for a more robust conversation about how to effectively staff this.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we shouldn't limit it to just the city. It could be the housing authority, it could be the URA, it could be maybe some other city-related entity, or even a county-related entity if that worked, who knows?
I'll make a plug for the PHDC as well.
Okay.
One part of this is that up until now, there was no focus to do this. So the city does what it does, but there was no focus to do this, right? There was no direct focus of land recycling. It was not a city goal, not even a city objective. So there was no strategy in place to make this possible. The URA and the Housing Authority does have their own objectives, but for the URA primarily their objective was commercial stuff, right? And then on the other end, the Housing Authority's objective primarily was affordable housing on its own land and creating its own entity. This whole idea of recycling land using community groups, using individual residents, smaller development, there was no place to lead that in the city. And so we're actually creating sort of a drum major, and then giving the drum major some tools in order to lead the band. What we're thinking about, at least if we go on this road, is not creating a new band, but instead of creating a new band, giving a new drum major who can lead the old band in a new direction. So I like that example. I like that one, right? I used to be in the marching band myself back in the day.
Yeah, and then in doing so, we have the accountability around timelines for moving the properties through faster.
Yep.
Because now there's nobody saying, hey, you need to send this notice.
There's no impetus behind it except somebody comes in and asks for a property.
Right.
There's no sale, there's no push, there's no this group has already come up with lists of properties that they would like to see on the block here for us to revitalize communities. The city doesn't do that. They're totally reactive.
Let's take our instance. There's an organization in my community, Operation Better Block, that's getting money to take housing and sell them, rehab them and sell them, right? Mm-hmm. There's no pipeline of houses for them. There's no vehicle for where they can go to the city and say, we have money. They're going to get money to rehab 4 to 6 houses every year, right? Something like that. Maybe a little less, maybe 3 to 6 houses. There's no vehicle right now, there will be, which says to them, can you figure out a way to get me 8, I have the money, there's all this property here, can you go clean these 10, 12 places for me of title, and we're going to rehab them and sell them. And, it'll make things better. Up until now, there was no vehicle to do that. Except the property reserve didn't clean title. It just took land and put it in the parking lot. There was no title cleaning of it. It just sat there. And so by the time, if I'm the community group, when I'm ready for the next property, it takes me 18 months from when I say I want it to when I can get it. There was
Right,
no.
but they eventually clear title on it.
It can clear title on it, but again, it's not a pipe. That would not be then a steady pipeline, because they don't clear title on it until you go and try to purchase it. So it just sits.
No, I mean, that's why we want the property reserve to be improved, but.
But this, I'm simply saying this becomes You were saying the same things. This
Right, I mean, if
becomes-
we can accomplish that, that's great. If
yeah.
by using existing staff, I think, you know, that would accomplish our goal. What about some of the other things, the powers of the land bank would have to, you know, to maybe take a conservatorship action or take a primary action at a sheriff's sale? Would we still have
We
some
could
of those
consider-
things as
yeah, we
part
could-
of
We could
our?
consider all of those things.
Okay.
Sheriff sales are more expensive, but they might be more expeditious.
Well, and that's what we had talked about, that in certain cases, that might be, you know, it might be worth the cost of the community organization who would be the, you know, who would get the property would then say, well, that would be worth it for us to pay that if the land bank can take that, that position at the sheriff's sale so that, you know, we really are sure to get it for affordable housing in the future.
It
And
might
I think
also
that's
be
the
good-
opportunity of, then you create an MOU or whatever with that group to say, this is how that cost would be covered, but you have the mechanism to get that property faster and actually be sure that you're gonna get it, which would be great.
It would also be good if we could change state law so that the second-class city treasurer sale gives us that same precedence.
That's the concern about the treasurer sale, for sure, yeah.
So I'm going to say again, I think I'm the only one here that has the concerns with the CDCs and the groups doing so much around the housing, because I think we've been hearing people in Pittsburgh say that they feel shut out of this process, and here we are figuring out a way to continue that same process, instead of trying to figure out how we can be more inclusive with some of the residents in the city of Pittsburgh who want to have a voice at this table, and yet, you know, I know that some of it's capacity, but they're never going to gain the capacity if we don't start working with them and give them some understanding of the whole process. But so I just want to say, I just totally have a concern there, that we're going to continue doing things that the community has asked us repeatedly not to do, or not being as inclusive as we should be and could be, if the will was there. And so I just, for me, that I have a concern. And when you talk about the property reserve, it was never beneficial to the whole city. It was beneficial to a section of the city. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot to be considered and discussed, but I would love to have some public hearings around this.
Well, it would come to council as a resolution, and so you could have public hearings at
Oh,
that
we
time.
will. We're going to have several.
Okay. So the title search and quiet title, is that where we're at, or we've already covered that?
I think that we've covered that, so that's the RFP that's attached.
Okay, so
Selecting a solicitor is something we
So-
can do without an RFP.
So do we need RFP do we need a approval for the title search, or?
No, we did that
Did last week? All right, so solicitor, where we at with that?
We don't have a full list yet, and that would have to be talked about with all the members as to who they would want to pick, as well as the city. I think we should talk to them about it, too.
I just think whoever we get, I'd like someone that knows what they're doing, and I think has to be attached to a firm that can provide us muscle. So those are my two sort of criteria, right? Is that someone who has experience, broad-based experience doing that. In fact, if we could find someone who actually has previous land bank experience, that'd even be better. Because I think that would make this quicker.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be the same as the title company.
That's exactly
It can be
right.
different. It actually might be a good thing if it's different.
It's if a different person, but we'll see.
One other thing I would bring to everybody's attention is our next scheduled meeting on April 10th is on Good Friday, so the chair may want to decide to either
April
cancel,
17th.
move that meeting to the next Friday, which is April 17th.
April 17th.
All right, I will be contacting each of you about April 17th and your availability on that day.
Takes us to the finance report.
That's, there isn't any finance report because I've already kind of given it under the other, but there are a couple of things we need to approve. One is the approval of the URA invoices, which I don't want to put on the floor at this point because I want to go back and discuss that in more detail. But the next two, Bailey, Rabb, and Associates is insurance advisors. They have a bill in for $500. This is a monthly bill, and it's a retainer for their advice on our insurance. I have talked to Nathan about canceling that contract so we pay it once, get all the advice we need, and get out until we need some more advice, and then we go back. So if I can get approval to pay that bill, which is on my desk at home.
Need a motion to approve?
Second.
You need a,
So moved, sorry.
Second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposers, nay. Next. Insurance advisors.
Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, there is actually a $21 bill for their advertising.
Need a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Need a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposers, nay. All right. Irene is not with us today. She's had an emergency at home. That takes us to the Communications Committee. Dr. Bay?
We have no report.
That takes us to legislative and regulatory updates. Senator Fontana?
We're not back in session, so everything's sort of sitting, especially with what's going on with the virus. I can report, I just got a text from Senator Costa saying there's 1,000 more kits, or whatever they're called, available as of today, and another 2,000 coming Monday. So that's a good thing. More tests, that's all I can tell you. Has nothing to do with housing, but
Any new business? No new business. I'll take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
so moved.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
All right.
Opposers, nay. We are adjourned.